What's up folks, how's it going? This is Watch from MW Technology, and today we're going to be talking about building the ultimate $1,000 direct drive sim racing setup. Now, it's been about 2 years since Logitech introduced the G Pro wheel as well as their Pro pedal. We actually had the opportunity to test out the PS5 and PC version of the wheel at the time. Really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, we couldn't keep it for a long time because it was quite hefty in terms of price tag, and we're coming from budget-oriented sim racing and used to spending under $500 for everything. And I knew eventually down the road I would get the G Pro wheel because I really love the experience. And I was recently surprised to see that Logitech is now offering a PC only version of the wheelbase. That's great since we only use PCs anyways for all of our sim racing stuff. And for under $799, $200 less than the console variants. And with the introduction of the G Racing adapter, you could use the old pedal sets for the G929 as well as 923, and even the old shifter set with the Pro wheelbase, and not have to spend another $500 or so to get the Pro pedals. And that means you could potentially have a pretty awesome setup for under $900, since you could find an old pedal set for like 80 to 50 bucks on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and the adapter is only $40 for adapting all that old hardware to the Pro wheelbase. And that brings us is what is the other alternative? We always like to do a Thrustmaster versus Logitech comparison, so I really want to test out the T818. It's similar in terms of price point at $699. The only thing with Thrustmaster is you are going to need to buy a rim and pedals separately, and I just wanted to get the most affordable options possible with Thrustmaster, so I got the Leather 28 GT wheel add-on for about $179, and the T3 PM 3-pedal set, which is all plastic, fairly affordable at $129, bringing us a grand total about $960 for the Thrustmaster system. Now, I do want to preface that we paid out of pocket for everything. We have no review samples, no sponsors in this video. Everything is really dependent upon your subscriptions and your viewerships. So please make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And I want to go through basically a couple of different segments in this video in our comparison. We want to go through the overall design of both wheelbases. We're going to go through the installation process, the quick release systems, and then talk about force feedback, and then weigh out the pros and cons of each system to see which one is worth it. Now, in terms of the design, you can see that the Logitech is significantly larger than the Thrustmaster in pretty much all dimensions, and it feels very hefty, very heavy duty, like a tank. And the Thrustmaster has a cool overall design, very compact, and that obviously could be a plus side if you're going to be moving the wheelbase room to room, place to place, and things like that. But overall, I think the fit and finish and rugged nature of the Logitech is a little bit of a step above in terms of overall build quality compared to the T818, which feels a little bit more like a glorified toy. Now, both of these wheelbases have some sort of front displays. On the Logitech, you have a small monochromatic LCD display that'll give you input levels on your steering angle as well as pedal information. At the top of that display, you have a small RGB light strip for RPM data. The T818 features a large hexagonal RGB light strip that goes all around the front portion of the wheelbase. And as you could see, there's actually a couple of different lighting effects. Firstly, you can control the brightness as well as the different display modes. But initially I had some issues, and I learned that later you need to update the firmware to get access to the brightness and display functions. So after you do the firmware upgrade, you can change the brightness, you can cycle between a static color or cycle between different colors. And if you're on iRacing, you have a couple of different display modes to choose from, which will have a variation between your RGB lighting for RPM at the top portion of the hexagon, and the lower portions will be your track flag lights as well as your pit lights. That's a cool feature, and it's pretty awesome that it's integrated right in front of the wheelbase. But there are two downsides. One, like we mentioned before, it only works on iRacing. And two, when you're actually using the wheel, since the wheel and the rim is in front of all that RGB lighting, and if you're not angled appropriately, you're not going to see those lights, and that kind of defeats the purpose of having these indicator status lights. Now moving forward, let's talk about the installation process. First, we'll go through the Logitech, which is super easy. It does use kind of unstandardized holes, but I think most sim rigs that are fairly recent, you'll find a way to at least hook up 3 M6 screws onto your rig and have it securely fit. You can get desk adapters and mounts for different applications, but for the most part, you're not going to have any problems mounting the Pro Wheel onto your cockpit base plate. Now the T818 was kind of a nightmare in terms of installation. Firstly, it doesn't come with the appropriate mounting hardware for a cockpit or desk mount. It's actually an $80 to $100 separate purchase altogether, which was not implicitly stated when you're initially buying the unit itself, which definitely kind of sucks. And since the wheelbase is so narrow, it doesn't actually use any standardized M6 hole fittings. So pretty much no cockpit out there is going to match up with these narrow holes. So that means if you don't want to do what I did, which is drill holes into your existing cockpit base plate, you're going to have to get that $80 to $100 mounting system. But you can drill holes like I did, and it works fairly well. It is a pain to do so, but it is what it is. Now let's talk about the quick release systems on each system. Logitech has a great system, very sturdy, super robust. It's all metal construction from the wheelbase to the rim itself. Very quick and efficient to install. The only complaint that I have is that there's only one wheel that you can right now hot swap onto the wheelbase. There's no rally wheel, there's no formula wheel, there's no nothing. And the wheel itself is not the best. Sometimes I do have problems with gripping it since the leather surface on it is a little bit slippery at times, especially if you're not wearing gloves or if you have slimy hands like myself, especially during long racing stints. And the other thing too is it's a kind of a D-shaped. It's not a perfect circle, so for people that rally or do drifting, it's definitely not going to be the best rim for that. Now Thrustmaster, on the other hand, has a ton of accessories. They're super affordable. There's officially licensed stuff from big companies like Ferrari and things like that. They have awesome overall modding community and third-party accessories. This is one of the reasons why they have become so popular in the sim racing world, and definitely a big advantage on the Thrustmaster side is you have a whole bunch of accessories and you can pretty much use all of the existing rims that they have. The only thing that you're going to need to do is use the adapter. Luckily the adapter for the quick release system comes with the wheelbase, unlike the mounting hardware, and you could simply attach it to any specific Thrustmaster rim. You basically align the serial connection appropriately and then you screw on the quick release. You still have to put in the little screw to make sure it doesn't come loose again, which is kind of a pain. The only drawback is that if you have multiple wheel rims and wheels, you either are going to need to take this adapter out and swap it in between, or you're going to need to get multiple of these quick release adapters. And the other problem that I have with it is that it's a plastic construction. It's fairly sturdy plastic, granted that, but there is some inherent flex, especially if you're super rough with it and applying a lot of torque to your steering angles and things like that. And I can definitely see some people eventually breaking it, and long-term durability is definitely not going to be a good thing with a powerful direct drive system that we have on the T818 and plastic components. Now let's talk about the direct drive force feedback experience that you get with both systems. On the Logitech side, since Logitech has True Force enabled in this wheel, and if you have it set right, it can really enhance things like road surface feel, traction, as well as the overall steering angle inputs can be a little bit more enhanced, especially if you're using an older sim that doesn't have the best native force feedback engine. Now, one of my favorite tracks of all time has to be Spa-Francorchamps, and the Erouge/Radeon Corner Complex is one of my favorites to test out driving dynamics in any given sim. As you turn into Erouge, you immediately feel the front tires get heavier as you load up the front suspension and tires, and then as you go through turns 3 and 4, you find that the steering becomes light as you move into negative G's. In Assetto Corsa, using the exact same car and weather conditions, I found that both experiences were quite similar, but I did find a little bit more steering inputs and response to the force feedback system on the Logitech compared to the Thrustmaster, which did its job okay, but it felt a little bit more vague and numb in terms of its steering inputs. Now that actually makes sense since the T818 utilizes an unfiltered direct drive system with zero artificial steering saturation. That means that unlike the Logitech, the Thrustmaster does not kind of code or add any extra force feedback to any given sim. So that means if your built-in force feedback engine in your specific game is not that great in terms of detail and overall programming for the force feedback, the Thrustmaster is not going to enhance it like what we find with the Logitech. The good news is if you move into an advanced force feedback engine setup like what we have with iRacing, which is probably the best in the industry, both wheels actually feel very, very similar and they have a tremendous amount of power. I was really surprised to see how powerful the T818 is, because even though it's technically 1 Newton meters less of a full force, 10 versus 11 on the Logitech, it actually feels quite a lot more stronger based on my steering inputs, especially set to max levels. Even in Assetto Corsa, going through the show to highway, if you're in an open wheel racer, you can really feel how heavy the unassisted power steering is. And as you go over the different road surfaces with large bumps, every time I go over the bumps on the T818, my entire sim rig shakes quite violently. And I have a pretty sturdy GT Elite cockpit from Next Level Racing. And in the exact same situation at full maxed out setting on the force feedback with the Logitech, I just don't get that same visceral response that I get with the T818. Just the force feedback system is a lot more smoother and feels a little bit more comfortable to use. Now, to summarize everything we've talked about, let's go over the pros and cons of each wheelbase. Now, Logitech definitely has an awesome force feedback system, especially for legacy racing titles and sims that might not have the most advanced built-in force feedback engines like Assetto Corsa, for example. But if you're using iRacing and things like that competitively, I think both systems are fairly good. But for other games, True Force definitely has some benefits there, especially if you're playing on consoles and things like that. Furthermore, the build quality, fit and finish, materials is definitely a step above the Thrustmaster. It has a robust and well-engineered quick release system, not to mention that you do have the option to play on Xbox and PS5, unlike the Thrustmaster, which is PC only for the time being. Now, in terms of the cons of the Logitech, firstly, it only has one wheel that's optional. Why make a quick release system in the first place when you're only going to really make one wheel? So that's, again, a problem for formula drivers as well as people that want a perfectly round steering wheel. And that's another con, is that the standard wheel is D-shaped. It doesn't have the best texturized surface. And for people that do a lot of drifting, rallying, need a perfectly round wheel, that's not going to cut it for them. And lastly, the G-Hub software on the Logitech side is a little bit buggy at times, especially when loading and saving different presets, going back and forth between different games. It doesn't sometimes recognize games and applications and doesn't switch between those different presets. And the force feedback controls are fairly rudimentary. You don't have controls for friction and inertia, for example, like you have in other more advanced and more current force feedback software from Moza, Fanatec, etc. Now, the pros on the T818, firstly, it has a lot more accessories to choose from, as we mentioned earlier. So plenty of different rim options, shifters, as well as pedal compatibility, great support of modders and third-party accessories. I also like the fact that it has a very powerful force feedback system. I would say equal, if not greater, to the Logitech based on my experience, and you can really dial it in to suit your specific needs properly. It also has a great compact, lightweight form factor, something that's fairly current in other wheelbases from Fanatec and Moza. Just the build quality isn't the best from its plastic construction, but it is fairly portable and lightweight. Moving over to the cons, firstly, as we mentioned before, there is no mounting hardware included with the wheelbase itself, which is going to be a pain if you don't want to drill holes into your existing cockpit. The other problem is that it's fairly plastic in terms of construction, especially the quick release system, and the wheelbase to the rim connection is all plastic, so there is some inherent flex and some long-term durability concerns. Furthermore, if you're not going to be using iRacing or any advanced sim with a great force feedback engine, the unfiltered force feedback experience is a little bit numb, especially on older legacy sim racing titles that might not have the best built-in force feedback programming and setup, and it's not as great an experience that I encountered with the Logitech True Force system. Furthermore, if you thought the G-Hub software was bad, well, the Thrustmaster drivers and overall system is just plain ancient, and even if you use the new beta UI system, it really doesn't enhance any extra features, and you still have very rudimentary controls over the unit itself, including the force feedback system, basic strength controls and things like that. No inertia or friction controls, again, like other more advanced sim racing wheelbases. Now, in summary, if it's not already abundantly clear, I think the G Pro wheel is definitely the better option in pretty much every category, even given its limitations with the one wheel option. From an out-of-the-box experience, you're just going to be better suited with the Logitech compared to the Thrustmaster. I'm a big Thrustmaster fan, and I think in order to improve the T818, what they need to do is include the mounting hardware, beef up the quick release system, and fix their software, and then it would be a more closer comparison. But for the time being, I would definitely recommend the G Pro wheel over the T818 as a pretty clear and cut comparison there, first in a long time. And I'm really interested to test out other budget-oriented direct drive systems from Moza, Fanatec, other companies. I know there's some better systems out there than even the Logitech. If you guys are interested in that, if this video gets some good traction, we would definitely love to go forward. I love making this kind of content. I'm a big sim racer, obviously, if you guys don't know already, and I'm going to be interested to see what we can do in the future on this topic. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you're subscribed and have post notifications turned on. Like this video, give us a comment down below as well, and check out the description for more details about everything we've talked about, and we'll see you real soon in the next one. Take care.